Hello, I'm Mike Rogers. I'm a Ruby developer from the UK, and I really love Docker. That's my thing. Um, Hopefully, can you see my screen okay? Is it all kind of coming through? It is cool. So Docker solved like a lot of my developer problems. Like it just kind of made me a very happy developer, and I wanted to share that with everyone and hopefully give everyone that kind of happiness which I got, and hopefully enough to share it with everyone else. So, what am I going to cover? So, I'm going to tell you a bit about what Docker is, just in case you've never heard of it. I'm going to show you how to use Docker, some of its use cases. I'm going to show you some tricks to make it like super easy to use. And then I'm also going to tell you about the drawbacks because they're quite worthwhile to know about. The aim of this talk is by the end of it, you'll come out of it and be like, okay, I think I want to try Docker, or I want to, show other people about it, and hopefully you enjoy the talk. So, what am I actually trying to solve? So, I really hate talks where they just jump into kind of showing you some tech and don't really explain like why why you want to use that technology. They just kind of ram stuff in front of you. I think that's not great. But with Docker, I think there's some really good use cases, and I've kind of just written a few down, which I think I'd like to share. So this is based on a true story. I was working in a company where we had to build a feature. I was running on the latest version of Docker because at the time everyone just installed. No, I'm sorry. I was running the latest version of Postgres, which is a database tool, kind of like MySQL. I installed it when I turned up on my machine. The other developer installed it when they started, and the main server we had was running, I think, version 10, and it was installed when it was set up like 3 years beforehand. And what's quite fun is I had to write a little function to do something, and I found this really nice function in Postgres which solved everything. And I showed it to my colleague. They were like, "Yeah, that's awesome. It works." And we pushed to production, and it took out production, which was not good. And had we had Docker, we could have potentially had everyone running the exact same version as production, and I would have never pushed that code to production and taken out the site. And it might have also like encouraged us to update our old Postgres version in production. There we go. The other one was the other story I have is it was my first day at work. I had to go install like an app to make it work, and I had like I don't know, like 20 steps to get it working. So I had to clone the repo, install a bunch of packages, get stuff working. And the first thing what happened was I had to run some brew command where I had to install some library, and I realized that it would when the instructions were written, they were written for like an older version of Mac, and everything just exploded in front of me. And this was when I was a junior developer. So I think I just hid in the toilet as well, just to kind of like hide my shame for like a few minutes, and like had to have a breather because I was like, oh God, this should all work. Why is it not working? Why are these instructions out of date? And had they been using Docker, the instructions would have been it's like, hey, go build this machine. It's kind of got a snapshot in time, so it'll just work. So yeah, that's one of the things it helps with. And finally, like the last example I've got, and this is like one of my big fears that one day someone's going to ask me to code in a language I've never heard of before or something really old. And I won't even know how to install it on my machine. But if you have kind of Docker available, you can kind of build an environment just to get set up. So maybe if someone's just asking like to make a small change to a project, like a text change, I could potentially make those changes, know it worked, and have a little bit of confidence to know what I'm doing. Cool. So what is Docker? What am I like kind of saying is going to solve all your problems? So I was trying to find a good like description of it, and the best I could come up with was kind of like this, where it's a piece of software which lets you build, download, and run lots of little virtual computers within your main computer. And I think that's kind of nice. There's probably like a better definition out there, but I like this one. This one makes me very happy. And there's also some little bits of terminology to kind of like know about. And I'm going to be like throwing this at you in the next few minutes. Don't be too scared. these are kind of the definitions I've found online. In the grand scheme of things, an image is just a snapshot of a computer you've built at some point using Docker. And it's a bit like if you were to version control a disk on your drive, like a disk on your computer, and say, okay, I always want to be starting at this point. And you can always go back to that point. The container runs that image. So you turn it on and it will be like, okay, cool. Here's the Rails application or whatever at that point in time, built with everything it needs to run. And Alpine Linux will come up quite a bit. That is just a really nice Linux distro, which is really, really small. And it's like 50 megabytes and you have a working operating system, which is super lovely. Cool. So how do we use Docker? So the first thing you need to do is go download the desktop app. It is a really, really nice app. You can just kind of click that button and it will guide you through the install. It's super easy for Mac. It's all right for Windows, and then there's some instructions for Linux. If you're on Mac, you'll have this lovely desktop app that looks really good, and it will show you kind of everything which is going on. And once you've kind of run that for the first time, it will go install like some terminal applications. So in this case, I went to my terminal, I typed docker help, and it's like, hey, here I am. Here's all my functions. And I was like, oh, that's lovely. There's some cool stuff to do here. So the first kind of function you might want to play around with, or the first thing in terminal, is docker run. And this lets you go download an image from the web and this runs something. So in this case, I'm running Ruby version 3, and all I've got to do is run docker run with these little flags which say like interactive mode and remove when you're done. But it lets me go in and just run like the Ruby console without having to install Ruby. It will just work in a little subcomputer. And I think that's really powerful and really nice. Then you'll probably move on to something a bit more like trickier, which is the Docker files. And these are a set of instructions which say how you want to build your image. And these are the images you can go distribute to people and that kind of stuff. So you can kind of reason about what's going on in this file, that I'm starting off with a base image of Ruby version 3. I'm installing some extra stuff, like in this case, Yarn, because I like to do JavaScript with my Ruby. That's pretty fair. I'm making a directory. I'm copying some files in. They're the files for my Ruby application. I'm running bundle. I'm running Yarn just to kind of download all the libraries. And then I've got a little thing which says, okay, once all that's done, I want you to run this one command and open up a port. And if once I've got this done, I just have to do like docker run and do these things. I just have to say, hey, go build this, give it a tag, and then I can just run that little computer and like get it all going, and it's really cool. And then if I really want to go to a new level, like I've also got these things called docker push and docker pull. So let's say I've built my little computer, which is running my little app, and I want to share it with a friend. So I can do docker push, and I can push my little image up to the web, up to Docker Hub, which is a bit like GitHub for Docker images. My friend can go download that image and then run the exact same code I just kind of pushed to the web. So if I have like a little terminal app or something where I'm just like, oh, it just has to do something little, they can go try that. And I think that's really fun. That's like really, really good. Cool. The next thing, which is super excited and makes me really happy, is Docker Compose. So Docker is difficult. I'm not going to lie and say these are easy to remember off the top of your head, because I don't ever run them. I use Docker Compose up. This is like a little magical utility where it just makes it easier, and it's a super nice simplification of everything. So how does it work? Well, you have these little YAML files where you define what your image is going to be, what services you need. So in this case, I'm going to turn on lots of things for my app. I'm going to turn on a Postgres version 2.3 little server, and I'm going to have like my app server running, and they're going to be able to talk to each other. And with this one command, I can just turn all that on and orchestrate it on my local machine. I don't have to install anything. It just has to go download it, which is really, really cool. But what makes me really happy about this setup is this is the same setup for WordPress. So you can see I've highlighted the lines. I'm using a MySQL database. That's the only thing I've really had to change. And I'm also using WordPress as an image. They literally distribute one. It's really cool. And all you've got to do is share the WP content folder, like nothing else. And you don't even have to like have WordPress kind of set up and installed. And you turn it on and you don't have to install PHP, you don't have to install Apache, but you just get that nice like website working in like a few seconds. And it is like amazing, really fun. So yeah, so once you turn it on, it looks a bit like this. It kind of says, okay, I'm going to turn on Postgres, I'm going to turn on the web, and it takes a few seconds, and then it's like, oh hey, here we are. I'm here with my IP address, and that'll all work. You go to the browser, it will just work. You can also run like one-off commands, which is super duper cool. So in this case, if I just want to go in and run bash within my little container, I can go see what's there. If I want to run a Rails console, I can just go do that, and it'll be like, hey, hello, I'm a Rails console. Go run some commands. The way I normally use Docker Compose is I just turn on the individual services. So in this case, I just want to turn on Postgres, and I can connect to it from my local machine using Ruby in the normal way. So you don't have to take everything, which is also really, really cool. And if you're using VS Code, there's a really nice plugin where all you've got to do is do Docker Compose up on a file, and it will just turn it all on. So you don't even have to touch terminal if you don't want to, which is really cool. What are the drawbacks? So if you're running it on Mac, the memory usage is really, really high. There's a really good screenshot somewhere where it's like, what is it? The amount of memory things take, and it's just like a black hole is Docker. It's way better on Linux if you want to give that a go. But yeah, I love working on Mac, so just get some more memory, I guess. It is a machine within your machine, so it isn't like as fast as running things just like as you go. And also the images do use a lot of disk space. You may remember in like my first one when I said that screenshot of, or showed that screenshot of me showing the desktop app where it had downloaded 5 GB. It does quietly download lots of stuff. You can easily delete that stuff, but it does generally cache a lot of stuff on your machine to keep things nice and easy for you. And also Nicky T, he kind of came up with this quote of like works on my Docker. It isn't like a silver bullet to make things work out the gate. You might run into like configuration problems or the other problems around like just orchestrating complicated apps. But I really like this quote because it's nice. So that was my introduction to Docker. I'm Michael Rogers. You can kind of find me online. I'm Mike Rogers 0, and I love talking about Docker and Rails and Ruby and all those other things. So thank you everyone for having me. Yeah, that's me done.